Hello, and welcome to the I've Seen Everything Reaction Wrap-Up podcast. Here is where I share my thoughts, reactions, and review for my latest reaction videos. To find these full reaction videos, please search for @SeenEverything over on YouTube, or check the description of this podcast for more information. Also, please remember to rate and comment on this episode, and follow the podcast so you can see when I'm putting out new wrap-ups. And now, on to my latest wrap-up for Sinners. Well, forgive me, I went ahead and skipped past the little post-credit scene I know is there at the very end of Sammy playing in the church. I would have had to mute that on the YouTube edit anyway. But what can you say about Sinners? I hope they win everything. I mean, if you're seeing this after the Oscars, you know if they did or not. I know they're probably not going to win as much as I want them to, but hopefully they'll win some good stuff. I just remember this being one of these situations. I haven't got a chance to go to the theater a lot lately, and we finally got to go to the theater, my wife and I, and I just remember thinking this movie looked good, but not really knowing much about what it was about, and just being kind of knocked over. I knew it was a vampire movie, but it just, as I said at the beginning of this, it's just so much more than that. It goes to so many different places and does so many different things, and does them so well. There's not really a false note in this movie anywhere. There's not like really kind of like an eye-rolling moment in this movie of like, oh, okay, whatever. And that's the thing. It's not purely a vampire movie. It really isn't. It's more of a drama in which a vampire story happens. It really has more to do with these characters and their lives and the world it sets up and what all these people mean to each other. And then have a vampire story happen in the middle of that. Even the way it ends, I mean, it's because they're vampires that Sammy gets to see Stack and marry again. But it was also this kind of coming-of-age tale for Sammy where he is coming to terms with who he really is and being pushed and pulled in different directions about who he should be and people trying to tell him who he needs to be, mainly his father. Again, I come back to one of my main points about his father. We don't see his father much. Like, we see his father at the beginning part, that then we shoot back in time, but like after Sammy's covered in blood and all that kind of stuff, then we go back and see him and wanting Sammy to do the sermon, and Smoke and Stack picking him up. And then when Sammy comes back again, that's all we see of his father. But again, one of the key things in there missing from his father is your son walks into your church. He's covered in blood. He's obviously injured. And your first instinct isn't to be like, oh, this is my son and he needs help. Your first instinct is to, how can I turn this to my son embracing the Lord? And it's like, that tells you, like, without having to see his father a whole bunch, that tells you a decent amount about his father right there. But also just everything else at work in this movie, the parallels, very clear parallels with the group of vampires of this, love and fellowship thing. And like, I would say trying to get people into a cult, but more just like a religion, like, hey, we're going to have our own religion. And like this hard sell of like, hey, you live in a world that is never going to be fair to you, ever. It's never going to let you keep anything you earn. It's never going to treat you fairly as a person. Come be one of us, and we'll just take it. You will be more powerful than you ever have been in a way that they can't take away from you. Where, I mean, technically they could, but basically that's the sell of it. And even at the point where they are legitimately upset when Smoke kills Annie as he promised he would. Like, there's a different thing in here in that in most vampire movies, you have vampires that are after blood because of their hunger for blood. In this, you don't see as much of that. You see a little bit of it, but like you mostly see it's like, hey, we want you in our group. We want you to be one of us, like among us, all of this stuff. And all of the people that they kill turn into vampires. So it's about growing their numbers more than just about getting blood. You see vampires represented in other stories. They're not turning a bunch of people. Like, you have vampires in other stories where they get to choose who they turn. Most of the people that they drink from, they're just like drinking because of their need for blood. They're not going to turn them. They only turn one every once in a while. But you do have stuff like this, other stories like this, where it's like anybody who gets bitten as an opportunity, like, can basically be turned. But yeah, it really didn't seem about, again, blood and this kind of hunger for blood as much as it seemed like, hey, we want to continue to grow our numbers and become this kind of like force. It's like, what was their plan if everything had worked out? Remek's going to kind of restart a congregation, for lack of a better term, or a coven. He's going to turn all these people. And then, like he said, they're going to go into town the next day and turn everyone else. And just this idea, kind of different from what you see of vampires in general. It's more like, hey, we want to turn the world into vampires, as opposed to kind of hiding in the shadows, or like, trying to not bring too much attention to themselves and only go to like drink if they need blood. I mean, not that they're like zombies as far as like kind of being mindless and all that, but more in that vein too, of like the goal just being to spread as much as possible. Man, there were so many wonderful things that sold this film, that sold the groundedness and the reality of this film. And it was all the relationships. It was Sammy and his relationship with his dad, his relationship with his two cousins, even the little bit of a relationship he got to have with Pearline. Not that a relationship really formed there, but beginnings of something. So obviously stayed with him. He named the club after her. The very real history that you could feel between Smoke and Annie and Stack and Mary. Again, only off of a couple little interactions, but man, they hit them just right. And you felt that deep. You could tell how deep those things went with them. And just the whole building of the world. Like, we spend all of this time before we ever get into anything to do with vampires, just constructing the realities of this time and place they live in to the point that you feel it. You feel the reality of it. It was just so well done. And that was one of the parts I didn't understand about Sammy when we got to Sammy when he was older. I guess I didn't pay close enough attention to that. I thought Sammy was just like a touring musician, and like this was just another gig that he was playing, and they caught up with him to come and see him and have this conversation. But that was Sammy's place. It was named Pearline's. You looked on the chair he was sitting, it said Sammy Moore. He had a bunch of old posters from old concerts he had played and things like that that said Sammy Moore on them. So Sammy ended up doing pretty well for himself. But it was also this thing again of, you know, it was ironic for Stack to tell him that he needed to bury the guitar. Or not Stack, Smoke. Smoke was trying to protect him. But one thing that came out of there that was unshakable was from the moment he played, that whole musical sequence, which was, again, just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Sammy knew who he was, for sure. But Smoke saying that, I mean, Smoke let Stack go. He couldn't do what he was supposedly supposed to do there either. But that musical sequence has got to be one of the best, if not the best, I think I've ever seen. Again, all of these ties to past, future, ancestry, all this kind of stuff. But there was also just another element to it for me the first time I saw it too, and every time I've watched that scene. Just kind of the creative flow state. I mean, I know there is specific ties to the ancestry here, and they make obviously specific references to that. It's a big part of it. But there's also an element to that feels just like this creative flow state too, of like being connected on a creative level, aside from even just an ancestry level, to just all of these things that have come before and after you. You just feel connected to something bigger than you that other people have connected to in the past and other people will connect to in the future. There's one kind of point at which you can all exist together. And adding the tie in this to the history of his people, to the future of his people, all of it. It's almost hard to describe as a scene how beautiful and amazing it was. So I've rattled on about this for far too long already. I could probably rattle on about it for a lot longer. I love Sinners as a movie, and I really hope they do well at the Oscars. Whether they do or not, it's still a great movie either way. And I appreciate you being here to watch it with me, and I will see you on the next video. Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the I've Seen Everything reaction wrap-up. Again, to find these full reaction videos, please search for @SeenEverything over on YouTube or check the description of this podcast for more information. Also, please remember to rate and comment on this episode and follow the podcast so you can see when I'm putting out new wrap-ups. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll meet you here for the next episode.